All right, so this is Brian Fagan. This is the third part that I've been doing with activity-based programming. This one's called Smiley Pop. A couple of resources. These have been consistent throughout all three presentations, but you have access there to the Python website, downloading Python, teach your kids to code, where I get the codes that I'm using and adapting, and then the Python standard library. One additional thing you'll need for this activity is you need to download and install Pygame, and there's access there to the website, and it provides information how to install it directly through Python. If you need help with that, there are videos and resources online, but you can always contact me directly, and I can walk you through that. So it's not too difficult, but it's not also intuitive. So this is again the third part. So we looked first at Etch-a-Sketch, and it leaned heavy on learnable programming, where each command, each code that you type has a very visible outcome. And the activity that we used for that was Etch-a-Sketch, which is a single line drawing, very similar to the old Etch-a-Sketch toys. And I teach and show students how to kind of reproduce that as a program. And every command that they type in has an immediate outcome, and they can make changes to it as they go along. Then the second presentation in activity-based programming was Yahtzee, and it leaned heavily on computational thinking, where we take a game. The activity for that one is students start with rolling dice, 5 dice at a time, and they look to roll Yahtzee on their first roll, which is 5 dice of the same number. You can then break that down into rolling 4 of a kinds, 3 of a kinds, 2 of a kinds, and then we dissect how that game works, and then we look at how we're going to actually write a program from that activity, and then the end product is an actual program that runs randomly, rolls dice, and then looks for 5 of a kinds and 4 of a kinds, etc. The third activity-based program is called Smiley Pop, and this one is heavily based off of problem solving, where we start with an existing program. The activity for this one is when they come into class, we talk a lot about different cartoons or different shows that they like, and we use that show as a theme for modifying an existing program. So they have to know what theme they want to build their program around, and then they have to look at an existing program and identify the parts and pieces that they need, and then make adjustments as necessary. And this becomes a big problem to solve. How do you go from an existing program to a program that matches a theme that you have chosen? So it's kind of fun because the students come in, and while I'm talking about it, I'll just hit play and mute this if I can. Actually, I don't really want to hear it. But I use Scrat from Ice Age as my theme. Let me go back to that. Well, if it plays, it plays. If not. But obviously, Scrat is the introductory video to the Ice Age movies. It's about a squirrel that continuously is challenged to capture this acorn, I guess, and it has a series of problems and things that it has to go through in order to get it. So we play the video and we talk about it, and so we talk about the whole idea that they get to go online and YouTube, and sometimes we'll share favorite clips from their favorite TV shows or cartoons, and we use that as a theme for our program. So what you see here is you have the existing program, which I'll show you in a minute, on the left, and how it runs. And then I have the end program, which is what their goal is. And what I try to get them to do is think about the end in mind, right? They want to take this existing program and they want to layer a theme onto it. They run the program. Let me just show you how that works real quick. This is Python here. So the program actually works where when you left click, it generates a bunch of smiley faces of random sizes. It has a black background. It has what looks like to be a transparent smiley face because they're not, you don't see the edges when they overlap. It has an icon here and some title bar text. And basically what I tell them is we're going to take this existing game and we're going to go into the code, which is probably more than they have learned at that time. And they're going to have to identify the parts and pieces that they need, add parts and pieces that they need in order to get the program on the right-hand side. And they could build it around any theme that they want. And that's really fun to watch, the creativity they come up with. But as you left click, it generates smileys, and as you right click, it pops them and they disappear. And there's many more extensions to this game where you can integrate math into the number of smiley faces on the screen, the number of times that you've clicked, the percentage that you have popped, etc. So you can go much further with it. But this is the beginning, and for me, this is the end that I have in mind. So we start by identifying the things that we need to change. We need to modify the title bar text and title bar icon. They know that they want to modify the background color, and they want to modify the graphic that is being generated when you left click, and it's also being popped when you right click. So we have 4 things that we have to do, 4 coding problems that we have to solve in order to get the end result. So I'm just going to briefly kind of walk you through the steps that you would use to guide them. But part of it's up for them to generate the questions and look for the solutions, and then provide any direction that you think they need. I don't go really in any specific order when I teach it. I ask them, what kind of things need to be changed. These are the 4 things in general. But if they want to start with the background or start with the graphic or start with the icon, that's kind of the direction that we go. And I think doing this and practicing with it before you teach it will give you the comfort level that you need to not really be on a script, kind of go with what they're asking. For example, I started yesterday teaching my 6th graders Python programming for the very first time, the very first programs they had ever written from code. And I've done it enough that, when the excitement starts to build and they're getting really excited and they're oohing and awing and they're like, can we change the color? Can we change the background? Can we change the width? Once you've done it enough, you're comfortable with answering those questions in the order in which they come. And it kind of creates a kind of cool, dynamic environment where their creativity and the questions that they're asking is driving the learning process. So it just takes practice. So these are the 4 things that we're going to look at changing. This is the program. This is the generic program. It is linked through the resources. It is importing Pygame, which you'll have to install, and using some random generators. But it's definitely more programmed than they need for right now. So I wouldn't stress necessarily having them write this program from the book. I would provide it to them, just have them copy and paste it. Because we're not necessarily wanting them to learn how to do all these parts and pieces. We're really looking for them to go into the code, look for the things that they can change, and make some changes. So this is the starting point, Smiley Pop, and it is in the resource library in the middle school site there on EdWeb. As they're scrolling through it, they do usually make a very quick connection between Papa Smiley, which is the title bar text, and they're usually very quick to want to make changes to the caption. And so the very first part is that they keep the existing code the same that's in the program. So they keep this code the same. All they do is they modify the text within the quotation marks. And that can just be Ice Age. And I'm probably not going to type all of it just to save time, but Ice Age Crazy Scrat. So whatever you want that to be. And when you run it again, let me bring it back over here, you'll notice that it now says Ice Age Crazy Scrat instead of Papa Smiley. So it's a very quick change and confirmation that they've made the correct change. So pretty straightforward. Again, they're not making any changes to the code except for what's inside the quotation marks, and they type whatever title they want. We've had everything from Pizza Hut to Dunkin' Donuts to whatever theme they come up with, Animaniacs, all kinds of crazy stuff that the kids will come up with. So pretty straightforward change there. The next change that they usually notice is the pic. And they can read it. This is an image that is loading, and it's Crazy Smile. And Crazy Smile, visually, the text matches what they're seeing in the game, sort of the crazy smile that pops up when you use the left click. To make changes to that, all they need to do is download the image that they want to use. So they'll download an image, a transparent image using a 100 by 100 pixels. They'll need to check the file type using the properties, and then insert it into the code. So to show you how that's done as far as image searching, I can search an acorn. And some of you may be very good with Google searches, but you click on images. You can then click on tools, go to color and change that to transparent, and then change the size to exactly, and then do 100 by 100 and hit go, and it will give you all transparent images that are 100 by 100. When you click on the image, if it has sort of a checkered background, it indicates that the image is transparent. So you would download, you would right click on that and save it to a folder. And I have that folder to show you. For me, I'm keeping everything on my desktop. Inside that folder, which is also in the resource library, I have the original program called Smiley Pop. I have my ending program called Crazy Scrat, and I have the images that I've downloaded to do the different parts and pieces. So you can see here is my acorn photo. I can right click on it to check the properties. I notice that it is a PNG file. That's important to remember, and it has a very easy name, Acorn. I generally encourage my students to change those names to something simple. A lot of times they downloaded something very difficult. I generally have them change it to what it matches, or to something that they can easily spell correctly. Downsize that. So all they do for that is they go and they change this to match the file name, Acorn. If you notice, Acorn was in my folder. It's the file name. And again, checking the properties, it was a PNG. So it becomes acorn.png. When I run it, bring this over here, you can see it. I've now replaced the title bar text, and the actual crazy smile image is now random sized acorn. So we're getting closer, but we haven't completely matched our theme. So let me downsize that. So again, download a transparent image so they don't overlap. You don't see the actual shape, the rectangular shape of the image. For the pic, it should be 100 by 100. Make sure you check the file type using properties. It could be a BMP, or it could be a PNG, or a JPG. You keep the existing code the same, and you just match up the file name and the file type inside that text. So crazysmile.bmp becomes acorn.png. So that's pretty straightforward so far. And let's see, next. Right, so you can kind of see those changes. We went from Papa Smiley with smiley faces to acorns and Ice Age scrap. Okay, so to modify the title bar icon, we have two pieces here, and I'm gonna go ahead and open that for us just real quick. Maybe I closed it. Sorry. I'm gonna go ahead and open up Crazy Scrat, and to save some time. All right, so here we want to download an image, and it should have a white background because the transparent text doesn't. It becomes a black background against the white title bar. So I generally look for something with the white background. Use the same search tools and techniques with Google. Check the file type again so you know what kind of file it is. You will have to add some existing code. You'll have to load the icon image. The good thing about that is it's the same code for loading the original pic. You have to just give it a separate variable name. In this case, we're going to use icon. And then all you need is one new line of code, which just sets the display icon to the variable that you want. In this case, it's going to be icon. So this variable icon is equal to loading the icon image, and then we're just setting the display to that image. So when I bring up my existing code here, I'm just going to copy that in there real quick. So you see how I've added this icon here. It's equal to icon.jpg, and that image was in my folder, which is also in the resource library. If I right click on it and look at the properties, this image was a JPEG file. I named it icon to keep it simple, and you can see it sitting right there. So that's the code that you need for that. And so when you run the program again, you'll notice that the worm looking thing, I'm not exactly sure what it was, becomes a very hard to tell crazy squirrel with an acorn. But we now have the title bar text and the title bar icon match our theme, and the image that is generated when left clicking also matches our themes. The last thing we have to do is change the background image. And so you see again here the transition from step 2 to step 3. For modifying the background, similar concept so far. We know we need to load a background image. They can change the background color if they want. And there's a variable up there labeled black, which is used to give the background its color. I'm not a big fan of this naming system. I probably would call that background color. That way, if you change the background color, it's not connected to a variable called black. But you can fix that later. But what we want to do is actually load a background image. The code is the exact same that we use for loading an icon, and the same code that was used for loading the pic. We're just going to use BG to represent background. That is not a specific variable name. You could have named that actually typed out background if you want to. So you do need to go download an image. I searched mine to make it exactly 800 by 600, but you can adjust that a little bit. Everything in here auto sizes based off of the background screen. But since this is set to 800 by 600, I just kept my image the same. You will need to check the properties of the image. You do need to add this code, and the text within the quotations needs to match the file name and type, which we have already done several times here, so it won't be nothing new to the students. They actually pick up on that pretty quickly. So to go to our program, I'm just going to come in here and do background equals Pygame. All right. I always teach them to open and close their parentheses first as a practice, then come back in, open and close quotation marks first, then come back in. We named this bg.jpg, and I'm going to check and just make sure it is indeed a JPEG. So I'm going to click on this photo again. It's in the resource library, so you can practice. I called it BG for background, and it is a JPEG. I could even go into details and see that it is an 800 by 600. So that's all ready to go. So there is one more step here. All I've done so far is load the background image into the program, but there is one more step farther down in the program code, which is very easy to do. As you scroll down, you'll notice right here is where the screen is being filled with that variable called black, and that variable called black, if you scroll all the way back to the top, is equal to the color code for black. Again, I'm not a big fan of that variable name, so we're going to leave that there just for now, just in case our background image doesn't load. It will have a default background color, which is black. So we're going to do a screen dot like block something or other. We can look at that later. We're going to load the background image, which is the variable BG, and then I'm going to load it at 0, 0, which is basically loading it from the top left-hand corner. And since it's exactly 800 by 600, it will perfectly match the existing screen that's already been chosen for this program. So two parts to loading the background image. One is adding the code, and one is just loading it down here after the screen is filled. So those are kind of like layered. So if this doesn't load for some reason, a lot of times it just defaults back to this black screen. So I'm going to run it again. And now, let me get my cursor over here. We have our crazy Scrat, the Ice Age. We have Ice Age Crazy Scrat as our title bar text. And we have our icon. And now we have the ever elusive acorns that Scrat is never really able to keep. And I think my daughter grew up before the last Ice Age movie came out, so I'm not sure if Scrat ever really did get his acorn. But you can left click to generate acorns, lots of them, and you can right click to get rid of them. You can go in later and add there's other versions of this program where you can, again, you can have it calculating percentages, number of acorns on the screen, and some other solutions like that, or problem solving like that. Let's see. So for this one, you do have to add a little bit of code, but I provide it there for you. And your end result is the Ice Age. So all of these, all the resources in this folder, I have provided in the resource library in the EdWeb community. I would start by downloading Python. If you're already comfortable with some of the, with a little bit of programming, I provide all the picture resources for you. That way you can go through and kind of work through the program yourself. I would encourage you a little bit, if you haven't programmed at all, maybe go back and look at Etch-a-Sketch or Yahtzee. Contact me directly, and I can definitely show you some programs that are a better place to start. But these are 3 very easy lessons. They don't require a whole lot of programming, and they're kind of all explained through these presentations. So a great way to integrate three programs that are based off of activities. So the students come into the room, they complete an activity, they do something, and they start breaking that activity down in order to drive the programming process. You'll find that the questions that they ask drive the learning process, and it drives the language that they need to learn in order to program better. So it becomes a sort of a neat dynamic process. So thank you for your time, and you can always reach out to me, and I'll be of any help. Thanks.